Hey everybody, it's Carm here. Back on a little sooner than usual. Wanted to just come on and do a little tribute, remembrance of another great artist we recently lost, George Winston, pianist, composer, interpreter of so many different approaches to music. Very influential, quite popular as far as you think of the last 40 or 50 years. I think there's only been really a handful of what you would call instrumentalists that have really kind of come to the fore as far as consciousness, or at least in certain circles, whether they're wider or smaller. Played instrumental music and really kind of captured people's attention and imagination, and just became really beloved. Now, of course, most of what I like is in that realm, one way or another. But I heard him pretty early on, when I was still in high school, early '90s, through Windham Hill and just in general. So it's a good especially getting into solo instrumental music. I mean, he was deeply influential and inspirational to many, and he passed on June 4th. Battled cancer for many years, on and off, but still played as much as he could, and still restlessly creative. And I think as much as anything else, his deep generosity really came through, contributing a great deal to exposing other areas of music, whether through his own playing or promoting other artists. Had a label called Dancing Cat Records, Dancing Cat Productions. He started in the 80s, which of course that endears me to him, being a fellow cat person, and particularly Hawaiian artists. Slack key guitar was really, as well as he also played some guitar himself, but did a great deal to kind of make them more widely known to the public. And he referred to his own style of piano playing as rural folk piano. Of course, I mean, I just hear the music of George Winston, which drew from and assimilated many different styles, different approaches into his own, to where it was hard to tell where one kind of blended into another, or trying to distinguish one from another, because the way it blended was so seamless. And he was born 1949 in Michigan and grew up in Montana for the most part. And a lot of his music reflects those kind of wide open, vast spaces. There's a certain largeness I find in his playing, without ever being, grandiose. Incredibly subtle, but it's like you're almost like taking in the whole of a musical universe, but yet it never sounds like it's beckoning you rather than bombarding you. It's that kind of largeness, much more subtle. And I have most of his albums, and collected them since way back when, since probably towards the end of high school I first got into his music. I want to concentrate on one in a broader sense, maybe not really even pinpointing specific pieces. This is his final album, that he released in his lifetime, Night, and I think it really illustrates. It's a great summation, as well as illustrating his overall approach that I think he'd had since the beginning. There's something about, you hear certain artists, they say, well, their songs all kind of sound samey, or there's something there. At first blush, if you're just hearing it, you may think that about what you're hearing in his music, but to me it's really kind of an inverse. The inverse is true, where he does a combination of his own originals as well as you could see he's interpreting pieces by incredibly diverse artists here. He has this ability, I would even say magical ability, to seamlessly blend his originals with theirs, with the other people's pieces, to where again you could hardly tell where one begins and one ends. You forget which piece you're on because he has a way of just seamlessly. I mean, part of that, of course, has to do with the sequencing of the songs, on the actual album. But something about his playing, again, the subtlety and nuance of it, his attention to detail, to space, to silence, as well as how he's approaching dynamically both the other person's piece as well as his own, just makes it so seamless that it's, you could say, or some artists say they've played the same song their whole life. Like Tomas Stenko had said something like that. And it kind of, he somehow makes it seem as if it's both is true. He's playing every song that's ever come through, but he's doing it in such a way that's he's distilling, his own approach with theirs. But I just find throughout, from the very beginning, you hear his roots, which is very much in R&B, blues, stride piano, early jazz. But then you hear like the overall American folk tradition, but then it goes over to, you hear, hints and even more overt of Japanese melodies. You hear the Hawaiian music, which, again, he very much promoted as well as, was imbued in his own music. Then you have, something by Leonard Cohen here, which he, you think of that, it has kind of a processional, devotional quality. He makes it sound as if you're going through a gallery of sorts in slow motion, seeing kind of like the history of all these artists kind of going by you side by side, and he's just kind of taking you slowly through. A kind of a dirge-like quality, but not in a morbid way. It's more of it's a celebrational way, but taking the time to take you through, again, beckoning without shoving it in your face. And other times the notes ring out so slowly and gradually, yet with a certain density to it, where it almost sounds like the largest of raindrops are just slowly sinking down and then hitting the ground, but again, very, very gently. Again, his approach is so, to me, it just sounds so large, but yet it's so, it's so soft and inviting, without ever sounding like it's overwhelming you. As you can tell here, I'm having a hard time. Out of all the artists I've really been a fan of over the years, his music is the hardest to put into words because there is so much there. But yet, again, he has that ability to just bring it all together, and it's so deep and so seamless. And I think we talk about, music that's accessible versus experimental. There's this side, there's that side. I've rarely heard other artists, even someone who I think may have influenced and inspired him and kind of started what could be called the solo piano. I don't know if you call it a movement, but when you think of solo piano music, you think of Keith Jarrett. He blended the experimental and the accessible, but usually there was kind of a delineation between the strains. It's over here and then the other one's over here. And George really knew how to do it all at once, with the technique of playing the strings inside the piano, or dampening with one hand and playing the melody with the other, almost making it sound like it could have been a koto or a zither at times, a blending of different instruments. But it somehow all at once. It was a hummable tune that was very accessible, but yet he was taking it out. But there was no separation there. It was all at once. And he did that for 50 years. And on this album, it's a great final statement, and a great continuation of many statements over all that time, where I think it's just illustrated beautifully that he was able to do that. He took it inside and out, and just made it all one thing. No either or. It's both, and all immediate at once. And it's as good as anything I remember hearing from him, and goes as deep as anything I've heard from him, and just all encompassing. And I don't think there'll ever be an artist quite like him. Again, for being as well known as he was, I think he was in a lot of ways underappreciated, for those very things, for those great subtleties, for the things he was most known for. Other things may have been, if not overlooked, just not spoken of enough. And I feel it was that very thing, that subtlety, and attention to space and detail, and being able to do all these things at once, yet it was never overwhelming. It was just, it brought you in. And among many other things, very much appreciate him for that. So could say a whole lot more, but probably said too much and not conveyed much of anything. But George Winston, a very deep artist that will be greatly missed. And if you're not familiar, definitely recommend going right to the beginning, or you could really start it at any point, and you'll get a real sense of his essence. But gorgeous stuff here, which could be enjoyed at any time, really. So night, George Winston. So just want to come in and just pay a little respect. Meaning to do it for a little while, but didn't know how I wanted to approach it. But I figured this is what I've been really on lately, this album, and it's just, like his music in general, is just very beckoning and beautiful and timeless. So, I hope you're all doing well, and thanks for watching, and until next one. Peace, love, and joy.